then move to topical questions. I want to say to the House that Pat Sheehan has withdrawn his name, which was listed at question number 7. Let us now move to topical questions to the Social Development Minister, and I call Trevor Lunn. Mr. Lunn.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're at the start of a new session, and I hope that the question of major legislation held over from the last session is sufficiently topical. So could I ask the Minister to give us whatever update he can on the question of the Welfare Reform Bill?
Yes, indeed I can. A lot of good work has been done in regard to the Welfare Reform Bill to ensure that we get legislation that is best suited to the needs of Northern Ireland. And I think we are in a much better place in that regard as the result of the negotiations that I and my officials have had with officials across in GB and with the relevant ministers at Westminster. There is a factor here that needs to be kept in mind. There has been correspondence from Westminster, from the Treasury, in regard to the potential penalties. And we stray into an area here which might suggest that having the topical questions after the other questions might be a better arrangement. But certainly it has been made clear by the Treasury the potential penalties that might arise. And I would hope that we would be in a position to get the legislation through and have royal assent by the end of this year. If we do that, we are then, I think, in line with what is expected from Westminster.
Yes, I thank the Minister for his answer, and I certainly wasn't going to raise the question of penalties because it's coming up very shortly. But can I ask him, is there any detail he can give us around whatever concessions and differentiations have been agreed or formalised between ourselves and the UK in terms of the different situation here in Northern Ireland?
On a number of occasions, I've identified 3 core issues which were raised right at the start by myself and officials, and that was, of course, in regard to the issue of split payments, the issue of direct payments as well. So there were several issues there at the start that we identified. The key thing then was to go beyond that, because I think we've secured those. That was a major achievement. It's one that is envied by people in Great Britain, but we have achieved those. We're just making sure that all of those things are fitted into the complexities of the much debated computer system that is handling welfare reform, which has been much in the news. But we're confident about those. And then there are some additional matters. I don't want at this point, until we've taken the matter through the Executive, to comment any further. But there are other issues, certainly, that we are determined to take forward to get the best outcome for Northern Ireland.
Jim Allister. Mr. Allister.
On the 4th of July, the Minister told the DSD Committee that he had no criticism at all of what his Special Advisor did in regard to his infamous phone call to Councillor Palmer. Has his Special Advisor since apologised? And if so, does the Minister now accept that Councillor Palmer told the truth about that phone call?
Interesting use of the word infamous by the member, who seems to prejudge things even before he has all the facts. I always think it's a good idea to wait until you get the facts before you make a determination on anything. And I want to welcome the member to the Social Development Committee. Hopefully his presence there will make sure that he's better informed on some of these matters. I'm not party to any conversation that took place, and I'm not aware of any apology being made.
Well, as Minister, I assume you would expect to be aware, so we can assume there is no apology. But on something you might be aware of, can you tell us, was any minister present when the particular phone call was made, or the decision to make it was made?
All of these matters will be considered in due course by the committee inquiry that is due to take place, and I'm sure all of those will be dealt with at that time, and the Special Advisor, I'm sure, will appear and will answer those questions at that point in time.
Dolores Kelly. Mrs. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can I ask the Minister to explain his department's removal of Frederick Street in North Belfast from the Social Housing Development Programme? And could he assure the House further that this does not demonstrate a lack of ambition within his department to build social housing and meet the needs, not only in Belfast but across the north?
Well, the member focused in on a particular site adjacent to the University of Ulster, which is, of course, the biggest development that will be taking place in North Belfast and indeed in Belfast over the next period of time. That particular piece of ground that was mentioned and which you referred actually belongs to the Department for Regional Development through Road Service. It is currently a car park. They have no intention of it being anything other than a car park, and therefore I see little point in having something in a programme which could never be realised because the land is required for car parking. And there will be substantial car parking demands there, of course, in relation to the University of Ulster and the thousands of students who will be coming there to the site. If you look at the detailed social housing development record and the future programme for North Belfast, that particular constituency has received a very large share, indeed the lion's share, of social housing investment over the past number of years.
Mrs. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Could the Minister confirm that there are at least 3 sites available for car parking to meet the needs of the University of Ulster? And can he not acknowledge the fact that, given the Department's decision in recent months in relation to Girdwood and the refusal of the Minister to build social housing where it's most needed on the basis of objective need, that the perception in the community that the reasons for this decision are actually quite suspect indeed?
I would encourage the member to look a little more closely at housing delivery and housing demand in North Belfast, because I think the more that is scrutinised and carefully scrutinised, I think it brings forward some truths that perhaps have been rather buried in the past. There has been an extensive programme of building. There will be significant more building over the next number of years, and I have to say I'm not responsible for the car parking arrangements for the university. Those are other matters. All of this is being, of course, taken forward by the university themselves. They are the people who made the planning application for the car park.
Mr. McGlone.
Could I ask the Minister, in light of the growing and pressurised demand that there is for social housing, particularly in my own area in Magherafelt and Cookstown, but what are his plans and the Department's plans to prioritise additional funding to get those houses built?
I think the priority is, first of all, to make sure that the money that has already been allocated to the Housing Executive for social house building and for the social housing development programme, that the money that has already been allocated is spent. We don't want to get into a situation, as has happened in the recent past, where the Housing Executive come back later on in a year and say we can't spend all the money that we've got. I want to ensure that every penny that has been devoted by my department and by myself for social housing is actually spent. And that brings us to the issue of how the Housing Executive and the housing associations are performing. A lot more could be done. We should be much better in Northern Ireland in terms of delivery of social housing, but that is entirely dependent on effective, efficient working by both the Housing Executive and the housing associations. And I would hope that as we move forward with housing and make some of the changes that I think are necessary in Northern Ireland, we will actually get a better delivery.
Mr. McGlone.
On that very point, and it's back to the Department, what in actual fact is the Department doing to make sure that the money that you had previously, indeed 15 million, which was previously handed back, that we don't have embarrassing situations like that, that projects are spade ready and that people have the potential to have a roof over their heads because the waiting list is substantially growing?
Well, it's always important that you examine waiting lists carefully, because there are many people who are on waiting lists who can actually be on a housing waiting list in Northern Ireland and be a homeowner, which is a slightly odd situation when you actually have a house. And anybody can put their name down and there's no restrictions on that. One of the things I have done, and it's the right thing to do, is to make sure that we meet regularly with the housing executive and with housing associations to get them to step up to the mark. Indeed, I spoke some time ago to the Federation of Housing Associations, saying that they needed to be more ambitious. I was pleased to have the opportunity of seeing what can be done by housing associations in Great Britain. Visited them recently with the Vice Chair of the Housing Executive. I encourage other members of the Social Development Committee here in the Assembly to actually do the same thing. Go and see what's actually happening there and how dynamic some of those associations are. Whereas we have, whatever the figure is exactly, I'm not sure because it changes through amalgamations, etc., but somewhere just under 30 housing associations in Northern Ireland. Only about half a dozen of them are actually building, and the bulk of the building is by a handful. That is a situation that needs change. We need a more dynamic sector.
Robin Swan. Mr Swan.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. Minister, the Facing the Future housing strategy for Northern Ireland contains a proposal to pilot in 4 areas a housing-led approach to the regeneration of communities experiencing blight, dereliction and decline. The Dury Road in my own constituency in Northampton was one of those areas. Can the Minister confirm that this project is going ahead and that it's not being delayed by the request from Sinn Féin to add a 5th area?
I took the opportunity, having brought forward the proposal for housing-led regeneration, which was an initiative from myself and from the department. I brought forward that proposal. We then went out and advertised, in a sense, and made known and publicised that new programme, which is good practice elsewhere in the United Kingdom, but has been, so far, never implemented here in Northern Ireland. Housing-led regeneration is simply just good practice. I took the opportunity of visiting 4 areas where people have expressed an interest in this, and Dury Road indeed was one of them, and I met there with local representatives and with local residents. We are now assessing all of the potential areas that we could look at on the basis of set criteria, and once those have been finalised, an announcement will be made fairly soon as to the final set of areas that are to be taken forward under this. But when you look at Dury Road, it certainly ticks all the boxes.
Minister, the question I actually asked was of the 4 areas. Can you confirm if this process has been delayed by the Sinn Féin request to add a 5th area? And if it's not, can you give us a timeline as to where the Dury Road will actually attain the funds?
I said there that we were applying the criteria. That is happening. I said that the announcement would be made within a few weeks, and this has not been delayed. It's simply being done properly, as you would expect it to be done. We will have the announcement in a few weeks of the areas that are going to be taken forward. And I told the folk that day when I was up in Dury Road, and I think they were quite pleased with that, quite satisfied. This will be taken forward very quickly. It will be within a matter of weeks. And when you look at the criteria, Dury Road certainly ticks the boxes.
McCurley.
Can I ask the Minister, what efforts is he taking to reduce sectarian tensions and to have the Loyalist camp at Ardoyne removed?
The situation there at Ardoyne is certainly a difficult one. There's a long-term piece of work to be done there, no doubt about that, in terms of building better relationships and reducing difficulties at that particular location. The presence of a Loyalist Unionist camp there at that site is not the only factor that's feeding into difficulties there. I think that the past number of years, indeed for quite a number of years, many years, there has been difficulty in that site. It's not something new that has suddenly appeared out of space. It's been there a very long time. So, for example, if you go back to last year, we had dissident Republican gunmen trying to murder police officers at that point. So there have been difficulties there for quite some time, and I want to see them resolved. There are various things we're doing, but I don't think that they are things that necessarily are going to produce immediate results. This is a long-term thing. It's been there for a long time.
Members, that ends topical questions to the Minister. We move on now to oral questions.